Okay, so this video is about how I started my plants, all of my elderberry bushes. And I did them through cuttings. I wanted to show you how to make a cutting, what I think is an ideal cutting. I believe that these two sizes are perfect, even though these will root as well. What you notice is on these ends, I've cut them on a diagonal. And this tells me this is the part that goes in the ground. And you bury them maybe about right here in the soil so that these nodes are underneath. And these nodes are on top. And you'll find them, they root and develop several ways. They'll either come out of the nodes. I've also seen them come out of the ground and develop some new shoots. I'll pick a long cane. I usually get 2 or 3 out of an individual cane. What you don't want to do is find the ones that are as big around as your thumb. They'll be pithy in the middle, and you want, when you clip them, for it not to sound like it's crunching a bunch of pithy material in there. I've seen those root, but I've also had more of those like fail. This is more of a viable cutting here. What I did initially is I placed them in water. It took a long time, couple months, to get the rooting started from water. And I had read where you can put them directly in the ground. So I did both. I got some bare roots. I used these clippings. I put them in water and also stuck them in the ground. I had probably better success with putting them in the ground versus the water cuttings. What I did with the water cuttings is, after they developed roots, I then put them in a pot. And I did have some of them fail once they went into the pot. I'm not really sure why. I could have just, not watered them enough. But I had really great success with sticking them in the ground. And so I think that you should give that a shot in your area if you're going to start you a new bush. So now that I've shown you how I got my cuttings, and this is a cutting here, I wanted to show you my results. I don't have many of my elderberries left in pots, but here's one. I rooted them in water, I rooted them directly in the ground, and then I took some of my rootings and I put them in pots, and this is one of them. This particular bush, was started the same time as this guy. And the only difference is that I put this guy directly in the ground and I left this guy in the pot. So I have deduced from that there's really not any point in my environment to water root the cuttings when you can just place them directly in the ground and have this kind of result. Here's another one. Now these bushes, I would say, are 6 to 7 foot tall, and I started them this spring. It's now September, and I would say they're about 6 months old. This gives you a little idea of its growth habit. These are the canes, individual canes shooting out of the ground. You can also see here where all the new growth takes place at the nodes. And then you have the shoots, the canes that also come up from the roots, which are really pretty slow. What I'm trying to say is that they're not incredibly invasive. They do form a colony. I guess if they're in a really, really wet environment, they might be rather invasive, but my experience with them is that they form more of a bush with these canes than spreading out like mint or something that's really invasive. This is an example of my bare root cuttings and plants that I've gotten. These again are 6 or 7 foot tall, 6 months old. I'll show you what I mean by bare root. And because of the growth habit of the elderberry, it's easy to find some small bare roots to clip off. Okay, this is an example at my oldest elderberry bush. It's 1 year old. I started this from a cutting. You can see the variety of sizes of the canes that are coming out of the ground. The gnarly ones are older. We have a really fat one back there in the back. I don't think it's as old, but for some reason it's much fatter. Maybe it is older. This is the new one coming up, and this is about what I think is the perfect size. Let me point right there for a cutting. A little bit smaller than my pointer finger. I would cut this off almost to the ground and then get maybe 3 or 4 cuttings out of that. This is a good example to show you the alternate leaf pattern. I've sort of dug up the roots here too to give you an idea of how they grow. They'll shoot these are roots here coming from the canes and here as well, and see how this has started forming its own cane. If we clip this out next to the root ball itself, then this would be considered like a bare root plant, and I have done that. It already has roots on it, and you can just pull it out, stick it anywhere, as long as there's a little moisture, and it'll grow. Okay, so this is my experimental ground. These are different bushes that I've rooted different ways and transplanted them at different times. So one of the mistakes I made is when I put my root cuttings in the ground to see if they would grow just by sticking them in the ground, they all came up, and I put them in one of my flower beds next to my house so I could care for them really well. Well, they shot up like rockets, and then I needed to move them. I needed to move them in the summertime. They had really gotten to where I couldn't walk. So I dug a few up, moved them back, and this one's been in the ground about 2 weeks. It was big. I guess it was maybe 4 foot tall. It looked like it was going to die. I cut it back, and now it's put out new growth. And that's been the case with every one of the ones that I moved, even in August in Alabama in the South. So I don't know what you would have to do to kill them, personally, which should be maybe a forewarning to people who might go out and plant 40 bushes like I have. I actually do have the property to do that on now. So you see, we've got an acre out here that I'm slowly developing. These are some more that I've recently transplanted, and it shows you what happens. The fresh little tender leaves that were coming out, they die. Sometimes the canes will start looking like they're dying, like this one. Okay, I put it through a lot moving it during this time frame, but I'm totally trusting that it's going to live. I do pay attention to giving them some water, and this shows you I actually rooted this guy. I guess he's 5 foot tall. Of course, he's leggy, mostly from where he was growing, I think, and this was just from a stick stuck down into the ground, and this is what it produced. My husband's going to die next year when he sees all the elderberry bushes coming up over here. He's agreed to let me start my farm. I don't think he knows what that means totally, and I think he's humoring me in a way, but it's going to be interesting to see the journey, and I'm hoping to document all the steps along the way for you. Thanks for stopping by, and hope you learned something that you can use yourself.